see we've all arrived. Let's get started. Donetta, you sent out the minutes from last month's meeting and today's agenda?
Yes, sir. Copies are in today's package.
Good. Okay. Anyone have any questions about last month's meeting? No. No questions? Okay, let's get on with old business. Harriet, any word from Jerry Miller on the EMT incident?
Yes. The director writes, and I quote, "You know very well the paramedics are well trained. Matt Dickinson called for approval before sedating the patient. Second-guessing our work is..."
Matt, this patient's overly sedated. Your documentation doesn't support that. Did you examine him? He's got temporal bruising here.
You're not in the street. The patient was totally out of control. He bruised himself deliberately. I called the attendant. He agreed to sedate him.
Yeah, you guys are like a bunch of cowboys. You know that?
Nurses.
It's a good thing they don't give you any guns.
What an inappropriate remark. No wonder Jerry wrote. Is there anything here that does not meet the eye?
I'm not quite sure, but I think Mike Webb rode with Matt as an EMT tech part-time while in nursing school. You would think they would be friends. Mike knows how it is on the streets.
That's not the point. Next time, Matt may think twice as to which hospital he brings his patient to.
Maybe he was oversedated.
Perhaps. But as a doctor, I would not make that statement. Mike Webb shouldn't have made it.
Probably not, but the nurses are really stressed. There has to be some give and take.
Absolutely. But if they have concerns about a patient's condition, they call the attending.
No question. All right, who wants to talk to Mike Webb? You or me?
I'll talk to him, but you call the director, Jerry Miller.
It's cowboys. I've never thought of them as cowboys. Campaigners, maybe. They risk their lives on the streets. Alienating them is not in our interests, nor is it in the interests of our patients. All right, what's next, Donetta? Donetta, where are you?
Oh, I'm sorry, Doctor. I was just thinking about something.
Well, hold that thought while we have our breakfast. Thanks.
Excuse me.
For goodness sake, you here again, Mrs. Duberson? This is the 4th time this month, and we have another week and a half to go. What is it now?
Oh, hello, dearie. I know I'm being a pest, but I had nowhere else to go. You see, it's my stomach. The pain, it comes and goes, and it hurts more and more. Oh.
Oh, okay. Just sit down over there. You're not in emergency. I have people here who really need help. The doctor comes around. He'll see you.
Thank you. Thank you, dear.
Oh, my God,
You're not rehashing the issue with Mrs. Duberson, are you?
I was thinking about it. I was so stupid. I was pushed at the supermarket and dropped a glass jar of peanut butter. The guy who pushed me was rude and belittled me when I complained. I got a taste of what Mrs. Duberson must have felt.
We addressed that at the last meeting. Everyone understands. You're not the only one who's tired of her dropping by for no good reason. But when she fell down, you were the first one at her side. Let it go.
I'll try, but I can't be excused just because others feel the same. I'm supposed to be nice to people, not judge them.
What was wrong with Mrs. Duberson?
She ended up with me. I stitched her up, talked with her, ordered a CAT scan, and found a 12-pound benign tumor in her stomach. It's no wonder she was in pain. It's out now. Tom, it looks like Dr. Lewin has arrived. Should we call him in?
Hold on a minute while I explain what's going on. For those of you who don't know, Professor Lewin is Professor Emeritus and a clinical professor of medicine at the University Hospital. He asked to visit us today because of a recent experience he and his wife had in our ER. As I understand it, it started out rather poorly, but Peter turned things around.
It was quite clear Mrs. Lewin was hurt. I could see she had severe bruising and possible breaks. I needed to separate her from her husband. He was distraught and becoming angry. Funny, though. Once the attention kicked in, he settled down, as though a switch in his head clicked on.
Ah, welcome, Professor Lewin. I'm Tom Maggiano. I chair this meeting.
Yes, Tom, I remember you well, and for good reason. Thank you for having me in. I called because I wanted to share my thoughts on your ER. A while back, I was involved in an accident, not of my making, mind you. Both my wife and I were injured. My wife more seriously than I, but at our age, everything seems serious. The EMS people brought us here to your ER. My wife was in great pain. The seatbelt had broken 2 of her ribs. Now, I didn't know that at the time, and I wasn't quite rational about it. I was anxious, and I insisted on her being attended to at once. One of your
Yes, sir. I can see she's in a lot of pain. The doctor will be here in a minute. He's attending to more serious matters.
More serious? How do you know what's serious or not? You're a nurse. My wife might be hemorrhaging internally. I want the doctor here now.
But, sir, she's not in any danger. The doctor will be here in a minute.
For heaven's sake, how can you know what her condition might be? She's 73 years old. Since when do nurses diagnose patients?
You're not a doctor.
Professor Lewin, I thought I recognized you. I'm Peter Young. I heard you speak at the medical school centennial.
Oh, you...
Let's have a look at Mrs. Lewin. You say you were in a collision?
Yeah. At that point, everything turned around, and my wife couldn't have had better care.
Is that a medical opinion, Professor?
No, that's the opinion of a man who loves his wife and is unlikely to take an objective view under such circumstances. But I do have some observations to share that are objective. I was okay, but the resident wanted to look me over while my wife went to radiology. And while I was waiting, I saw a terrified young woman come in holding a limp baby. It was obvious that both mother and baby needed immediate attention. Frankly, I was worried, but immediately, 2 nurses and the resident converged on the mother. And as I best recall...
Oh, doctor, this baby is really hot.
Please, the mother's upset enough.
Please,
Let's not
ma'am,
make it
Mrs.
any
Gersh,
worse.
are you okay? The baby's gonna be fine. What's the baby's name?
Cheryl, she's only 4 months old.
May I call you Susan?
It's fine. She slept for so long, and when I went to wake her up, I thought that she was dead.
Cheryl is gonna be okay. She's in the best possible care. She's with the doctor now. Everything's gonna be okay. It's okay to cry, but she'll be all right. Let's sit down a while. We'll know in a few minutes.
The mother slowly relaxed. The nurse stayed with her even though she seemed calm enough. Dr. Pete, you recall the case, don't you?
Yes, the resident examined the baby carefully and started a drip. The baby's temperature was 105.8. The fever was brought down very quickly after the baby was given a Tylenol suppository. 15 minutes after the baby's arrival, mother and baby were on their way to the pediatric floor, both much better.
I was impressed with the people who handled this case, and I said so when I apologized to the nurse to whom I'd been so rude. In fact, she handled herself quite well.
Thank you, Dr. Lewin. I am that nurse. And in fact, you seemed so certain that you made me a little nervous. I didn't realize you were a doctor.
I overstepped the bounds. Had you known, you might have treated me differently, and then perhaps...
Well, maybe I wouldn't have tuned in as much.
Professor Lewin, thank you for taking the time to come in. We appreciate an expert opinion, and we're pleased that things turned out well for Mrs. Lewin. Now that you've seen our ER, perhaps we can induce you into taking a few calls or sharing your insights with us again.
No calls, Tom, but anytime I can come in and lecture you, I'd be happy to. Once a teacher, always a teacher. I still remember a few things. Thank you for your patience.
Okay, the last item under old business is the Jarvis matter. Karen, what did you learn from that?
Well, as Professor Lewin was talking, I realized that the Jarvis situation occurred almost simultaneously with Susan Gertz bringing in her baby. The Jarvis girl was a 10-year-old with an injured ankle. She came to the ER with her mother. It was obvious she was in distress because she was crying, but the mother was a basket case.
Please fill out these forms, ma'am. If you have a health card, I need to make a copy of it, and you'll be called as soon as the doctor is available.
My child is hurt. Her leg is broke. Where's the doctor? Why can't we see him now? Can't you give her something for the pain? Don't you people care?
Please, ma'am, I need you to fill out these forms.
I don't care about any forms. My daughter needs a doctor.
Mrs. Jarvis, you... Caleb! Guard!
Keep your hands off my sister.
Sir, please, I don't want any trouble. If I must, I'll have you removed from the hospital. If you push me again, I'll have you charged with assault.
The nurse calmed things down and was able to encourage Mrs. Jarvis to fill out the paperwork while she took the daughter into an examining room. Turned out the daughter had a mildly injured ankle. By the time the mother returned, she was fine and she was showing off her ankle support. The brother, on the other hand, continued to be very loud and abusive. He had to be removed from hospital property.
Was he charged?
No, they just took him down to the station house for a while and then sent him home.
Okay, any reason to second-guess ourselves on this one?
Maybe not, but the security people should have kept their hands off unless someone's irrational. The woman, on the other hand, was upset, but the nurse would have handled it without the guard's intervention.
You may be right, but only in hindsight. Remember, the guard was called upon for help. Apparently, Danetta and Caleb thought this woman was way out of line.
What does legal say?
Legal doesn't seem concerned. Nothing's come of it yet.
Okay, good enough. Caleb, the security guard, has learned something, or at least we hope so. It may seem like a minor incident, but these things sometimes take on a life of their own and become a lot more than anyone expected. Okay, what's next, Danetta?
Under new business, we have the Cooper matter. Then we are expecting Rabbi Black's daughter. And you wanted to go over Susan Gertz's letter and Press-Ganey response.
Oh, right. Okay, let's start with Mrs. Gertz's letter. Do you have copies of the Press-Ganey?
Yes, doctor. It's in the folder.
Susan Gertz, you may remember, is the woman Professor Lewin spoke of, the one with the sick baby. Mrs. Gertz wrote a letter to the president and the trustees. She also sent in a wonderful Press-Ganey. She wrote extensively on the form. I wanted you to have it because it's what we'd like to see from all of our patients. Danetta, is the letter in the folder also?
Yes. The page is highlighted and copied as you directed.
Good, Danetta. We have to pay attention to the little things. Okay, those of you who have the letter in front of you, note that I've underlined a few key phrases. I felt that nothing in the world was more important to the nurses and the doctor than my baby. The nurse was as kindly as my mother. The doctors kept me informed every step of the way until I knew my baby was all right. Watching those nurses work made me fully understand the reference to angels of mercy. I came in crippled with fear and without knowing at the time, placed my baby into the hands of some of the best people I can imagine. She has many more nice things to say in the letter and in her assessment. This is a case we can use in our orientation of new residents.
Isn't this the woman that Professor Lewin was talking about?
Right, Hal. But our next case, the Alvina Cooper Craven matter, is not quite so fortuitous. The Cooper name should ring a bell with you. The Cooper Pavilion is our architectural showplace. Okay, recently a call came into the ER advising them that Mrs. Cooper Craven had been in an accident. A team was waiting to attend to her upon her arrival. However, when she arrived...
Hold Mrs. Craven on the side, please. This man's been seriously injured. Take him to trauma.
Wait, excuse me. My mother's injured. We called ahead.
Miss Craven?
Mrs. Irons, Mrs. Craven's daughter.
Mrs. Irons, your mother is injured, but she's not in a life-threatening situation. The man that just came in had serious head and facial injuries. He needs immediate attention. We'll be with your mother in a few minutes.
My father's a trustee here. My grandfather built the Cooper Pavilion. My mother shouldn't have to wait.
Mrs. Irons, your mother is going to be taken care of immediately. Please wait in the reception area and we'll be with her right away.
Troy, is there another hospital where we can take Mom?
As a nurse, Sherelle did not mean to offend, of course. The daughter needed something more than to be told that her mother wasn't the priority, but Sherelle was attending to a more seriously injured accident victim.
That's understood, but no matter who the patient may be, the nurse has to deal with the situation as if it's the only situation. Mrs. Gertz showed us how important that was.
No question. At that point, the second patient was the priority. So did they take her to another ER?
No, the mother was alert enough to calm her down, and shortly thereafter, the husband arrived with the personal physician. Everything turned out fine. Everyone left in fine spirits, and they were all very thankful.
What happened to the other patient?
Well, that turned out fine. Bill Somers performed artistry. Working with the eye surgeon, he saved the eye, reshaped the cheekbone, and stitched the skin and muscle flap so perfectly that the scarring won't be apparent for a couple of years or so.
He performed wonderfully, all right. He also embarrassed the whole department and scared the hell out of the patient when he went into this rage over what he labeled inferior sutures.
Well, come on, Harriet, it wasn't that serious.
It was serious, Tom. He quieted down when I came into the scene, but he had the attention of everyone within earshot with his nasty tirade, which means almost everyone within a 2-block radius.
Well, I've already spoken to him, and he understands the new standards on sutures. I didn't make much of a fuss about his complaints. He seemed subdued, almost contrite during our conversation.
Oh, I think he got the message. He sent in flowers for the nurses' station after you spoke with him.
Good. He's back on the team.
Before we go on, is there a problem with the sutures?
Well, some of the docs don't like him, but they've passed every clinical trial. They're a bit stiffer, and they take some getting used to, but otherwise they seem fine. What's next?
Mrs. Cantor, Rabbi Black's daughter's here.
Yeah, I called Mrs. Cantor in to speak to us because of her father's experience in our ER, but I'm going to let her tell you the story. Mrs. Cantor, thank you very much for coming by. These folks here are our quality management team. Team, this is Mrs. Marina Cantor, daughter of Rabbi Avron Black. I invited you in because I was very touched by your letter.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I really didn't expect such a big fuss over the letter, but I'm very glad that I'm going to have the opportunity to talk to you about it. A few weeks ago, I brought my father into your emergency room. Take it. Nurse, pardon me, nurse.
Yes, ma'am.
My father has to use the bathroom.
I'll get an attendant to help.
Excuse me, ma'am. My father has to use the bathroom. I wonder if you could help us.
Sorry, Lee. I don't work in the ER.
Sir, could we get some help around here, please? We have been here for 45 minutes. My father has to use the bathroom.
Do you need a urinal?
Yes, that's what he needs.
Nurse, can you give him a urinal, please?
Doctor, it's right there, right behind you.
I can't explain to you how my heart broke at that moment. You wouldn't understand. Because you don't know my father. But I want you to know him. This picture was taken in 1937. He was just 17 years old, and he had distinguished himself at the University of Krakow. Here he is in his uniform. The Polish army conscripted him in his second semester at the university. Oh, this is a very rare picture. This was taken during the pogrom in Warsaw. He was in the resistance, and he was one of the few who survived and who escaped the journey to Auschwitz. This picture was taken just after I was born. He was 37 years old, and he was the head of a congregation. He loved his service as a rabbi. He especially loved the teaching. Oh, did I tell you that after he came to America in 1948, he studied English, and he was accepted at Yeshiva University, and then he took his PhD in religious Jewish studies. Here he is with my mother and me at Niagara Falls. He would talk for years. He talked about wanting to see the falls, and I'm glad that he finally did see it. I was too small, of course, to remember it. But when my mom died a couple of years later, all he could say at the funeral was, I'm so glad that she finally got to see the Great Falls. Excuse me. After she died, he started to fail, but it was very gradual. It was very subtle. I didn't really notice it until high school. But he was very active, and he was active until he got the cancer, and he was active after, long after he got the cancer. I always knew that he was an important person. He never told me, of course, or talked about it, but he was, besides the fact that his congregation really loved him, he was invited to the White House to meet the president at an ecumenical conference. Here's the letter. And then he taught as a visiting scholar at Brandeis University, and he lectured at Harvard and at Yale. My father doesn't have too many days left upon this earth. And I have always known him to have open arms and help anybody who needed help. But in my whole life, I've only seen him cry one time, on one occasion, and it was not when my mother died, and it was not when he learned that he had the cancer. In fact, I asked my uncle why my father didn't cry at my mother's funeral. And he said that my father had left all his tears in the sewers of Warsaw. But he did cry in your hospital. And that's what I have come to tell you. That's the message I have got to bring you. That it really was not right to make my father cry.
Thank you, Mrs. Cantor. Your letter was powerful, but this was something that we needed to hear, and I knew it would be. Please accept my apologies and the apologies of the committee. In the push and pull of our days, sometimes we forget that those whom we serve, no matter what their walk in life, have dignity. Unless anyone has any questions of Mrs. Cantor, this meeting's over.